Her daughter was too unsightly for matrimony. Yet, a human artificer nonetheless offered his suit. Before we embark on this chronicle, offer a swift salute in the remarks section, and apprise me of your viewing locale. It genuinely aids in bolstering the channel. Within the regal stronghold of Valerian, where crystalline spires reached for twin celestial bodies and courtiers adorned themselves in raiment surpassing the cost of interstellar vessels, Queen Thera clasped her daughter's hand, her heart fracturing anew for the 1000th instance. Princess Kayla stood beside her sovereign, her demeanor embodying a quiet fortitude that had become her bulwark, her scaled visage set in a pretense of practiced disinterest, as yet another diplomatic delegation politely rescinded their proposed accord. The Torvan emissary executed a profound bow, his forearms sweeping in a gesture of regret that deceived no one. His pronouncements were meticulously chosen, diplomatically veiled, yet their import pierced like a stiletto. He cited a discordance in cultural norms, a disparity in aesthetic sensibilities too vast to bridge. While acknowledging the political expediency of such an alliance, he conveyed that his prince sought a consort whose visage conformed to Torvan ideals of beauty. The word unlovely was never uttered. It was superfluous. Queen Thessera observed his departure, then turned to her offspring. Kayla's scales, which ought to have gleamed with the opalescent splendor characteristic of their kind, were matte and dull, a genetic quirk afflicting fewer than 1% of Valerian births. Her cranial ridge was uneven, her eyes set too far apart. By the stringent dictates of the Galactic Court, where attractiveness served as a commodity and outward appearance dictated one's trajectory, Princess Kayla was deemed ineligible for marriage. "This is unjust, Kayla," Thea murmured, her fingers tightening around her daughter's hand. Kayla offered a smile, and within that expression resided a resilience that filled Thessera's breast with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "Life seldom is, mother. I have found acceptance." But Thessera had not. She had endured 20 cycles of witnessing her brilliant, amiable, and remarkably witty daughter spurned by suitors who never bothered to perceive her essence. Kayla possessed fluency in 7 tongues, could engage in discourse on interstellar jurisprudence with the most astute legal minds, rendered melodies upon the resonance harp with such exquisite skill that hardened warriors were moved to tears, and her laughter possessed the power to illuminate entire chambers. None of it held consequence. They observed her countenance and fabricated their pretexts. The royal workshop buzzed with its customary vigor, a controlled pandemonium of repairs and servicing that ensured the palace fleet's operational readiness. Logan Hayes absently wiped coolant from his palms, squinting at the thruster assembly he had been reassembling for the preceding 6 hours. The craft belonged to some noblewoman or another. He had long ceased attempting to catalog the aristocracy. To him, they were merely names on service orders, vessels requiring mending. "Hayes, are you nearing completion on that?" his supervisor inquired from across the vast bay. "We have the royal cruiser arriving for routine servicing." Logan emitted a grunt of assent and tightened the final fastener. The thruster assembly clicked into place with a gratifying resonance, signaling a job well executed. He had been employed in the palace mechanics bay for 3 standard years. Ever since his transport vessel had experienced a breakdown within Valerian territory, and he had rectified it using only surplus components and what his grandfather termed good old human resourcefulness. The Queen's chief mechanic had been sufficiently impressed to extend him an immediate employment offer. The work was satisfactory, the remuneration dependable, and the Valerians treated him equitably, indeed more than equitably, if he were to be candid. They harbored a curiosity about humans, posed incessant inquiries regarding Earth and the Terran systems, and seemed genuinely amused by what they termed his peculiar methods of problem resolution. Logan simply referred to it as making do with available resources, a skill honed during his upbringing on a colony world where the nearest parts emporium was 3 weeks distant by warp drive. He was in the process of cleaning his instruments when he perceived a disturbance near the bay's entrance. Elevated voices, tinged with distress. Logan looked up to discern a small cluster of individuals gathered around someone prone on the ground. Without a second thought, he retrieved his emergency kit and hurried over. "Stand back. Allow her air," he instructed, parting the throng. Lying on the ground was a Valerian female, her respiration shallow, her scales assuming a pallid hue indicative of oxygen deficiency. He recognized the symptoms instantaneously. Atmospheric incompatibility, most likely a malfunctioning personal environmental regulator. "Someone fetch medical assistance immediately," Logan commanded, already extracting a portable oxygen apparatus from his kit. He had incorporated it several months prior following a comparable incident involving a visiting Aquarian dignitary. The Valyrian woman's eyes were unfocused, wide with panic. Hey, look at me. You're going to be all right. This is oxygen. It will help." He fitted the mask over her face, adjusting the flow. Within mere seconds, her breathing eased and color began to return to her scales. The surrounding crowd had fallen into a profound silence. Logan, entirely engrossed in his patient's well-being, remained oblivious. "There, just breathe, nice and slow. You're okay." The woman's gaze met his, and Logan perceived within them intelligence, gratitude, and an indefinable quality he couldn't quite place. She was unusually striking, even by Valyrian standards. Her scales possessed a matte rather than uniform sheen. Her facial features were asymmetrical. Logan considered it lent her character, rendering her face intriguing in a manner that the formulaic perfection of the nobility sometimes lacked. The medical contingent arrived, a flurry of activity and professional expertise. They assumed control, but not before the woman extended a hand and lightly touched Logan's, a silent expression of thanks. He inclined his head, gathering his equipment. "Just another day at the palace," he mused internally, "saving a life before the midday meal, then rebuilding an engine afterward." It wasn't until later, when his supervisor drew him aside with an expression straddling awe and apprehension, that Logan learned the individual he had aided was Princess Kayla, the Queen's sole offspring. And it was not until 3 days later, upon the arrival of a royal summons requesting his presence at a formal repast, that Logan began to comprehend that his existence was poised for considerable complication. The formal dinner proved to be anything but. Logan had anticipated a vast banquet hall populated by an assembly of staid nobles. Instead, he was ushered into an intimate dining chamber where Queen Thessera and Princess Kayla awaited. The Queen exuded an imposing aura, an inherent characteristic of true authority, her scales shimmering with the hues of deep space, her bearing regal yet devoid of frigidity. Kayla was seated adjacent to her mother, and upon observing Logan, she offered a smile. "Mr. Hayes," the Queen commenced, gesturing to his designated seat, "we are grateful for your attendance. Please be seated. I wish to personally convey my gratitude for your swift perception and decisive action 3 days prior. You preserved my daughter's life." Logan took his seat, feeling acutely out of place in his clean yet unadorned work attire. "I merely performed what any individual would have done, Your Majesty." "Not any individual, I assure you," Kayla interjected, her voice imbued with a warm current of amusement. 17 individuals stood by and observed. You were the sole person to act. The meal was surprisingly agreeable. The Queen inquired about his vocation, about Earth, and about the circumstances that had led him to Valyrian. Logan found himself gradually relaxing, recounting tales of his formative years on a colony world, of learning the craft of mechanics from his grandfather, a man capable of mending anything with adhesive tape and sheer obstinacy. Kayla laughed at his anecdotes, posed insightful questions, and challenged certain of his assumptions regarding galactic politics in a manner that stimulated his contemplation. He found himself observing her as she spoke. She became animated when discussing subjects close to her heart, her hands gesturing expressively, her eyes alight with passion. She possessed strong convictions on every matter, firmly rooted in knowledge and wit. Logan appreciated this quality. He had grown weary of individuals who readily concurred for the sake of amiability. As the evening progressed, Logan realized he was enjoying himself more than he had in months, perhaps even years. Upon their departure, Kayla accompanied him to the egress. "Thank you again," she expressed, "for saving my life, but also for this evening. It was a pleasure to converse with someone who does not treat me as though I might shatter." Logan regarded her, a flicker of bewilderment crossing his features. "Why would anyone presume you might shatter? You strike me as quite resilient." A subtle shift occurred in Kayla's expression, a fleeting vulnerability swiftly masked. "You would be surprised, Mr. Hayes." In the ensuing weeks, Logan contrived reasons to frequent areas of the palace where he might fortuitously encounter the princess. She, in turn, devised pretexts to visit the Mechanics' Bay. Their conversations encompassed all topics, both profound and trivial. She acquainted him with the palace gardens, expounded upon Valyrian history, and imparted phrases in her native tongue that elicited mirth from his fellow mechanics. He demonstrated to her the process of rebuilding a motivator core, elucidated the nuances of human musical genres, and regaled her with accounts of his youthful misjudgments. Their camaraderie deepened with each passing day. Logan discovered that Kayla possessed an eidetic memory and could recite entire legal codes verbatim. She, in turn, learned that Logan had conceived of a novel plasma flow regulator that held the potential to revolutionize propulsion systems, yet he had never submitted it, believing no one would heed the words of a mere mechanic. They devoted countless hours to the palace library, Kayla engrossed in ancient manuscripts while Logan sketched designs, occasionally pausing to engage in philosophical debate or to dispute the optimal approach to initial contact protocols with newly discovered species. One afternoon, Kayla brought her resonance harp to the mechanic's bay. The other personnel ceased their tasks to attend as she performed. Crystalline notes permeated the cavernous space with an ethereal beauty. Logan observed her intently as she played, noting her absorption in the music, the manner in which her customary reserve dissolved. Upon the conclusion of her performance, a moment of profound silence preceded an eruption of applause from the mechanics. "That was extraordinary," Logan avowed. "Why do you not perform more frequently?" Kayla's countenance faltered subtly. "People do not attend to hear my music. They come to scrutinize the unconventional princess, to whisper about the unfortunate circumstance of someone so aesthetically unappealing possessing such talent. After a time, I ceased providing them the opportunity." "Their loss," Logan stated firmly. "That was among the most exquisite things I have ever experienced." On another occasion, Logan escorted Kayla to a bustling marketplace in the city, far removed from the palace and its scrutinizing gazes. She was cloaked, her hood drawn, and for a few precious hours, she was simply another individual perusing stalls laden with exotic foodstuffs and artisanal crafts. Logan procured for her a small carved effigy of a mythical Valyrian creature, eliciting a delighted peal of laughter, which she tucked into her pocket as if it were a precious treasure. "I can scarcely recall the last occasion I simply ambled about like this," she confessed. "Without escorts, without protocol, without being subjected to stares. Then we must do so more often," Logan proposed. "You merit ordinary experiences." "Ordinary," Kayla mused, testing the word. "I am uncertain I would recognize it if it struck me." "Well, I am an expert in normalcy, aggressively so even. I can instruct you." They were seated at a quaint cafe, imbibing a beverage that bore a faint resemblance to coffee, albeit with a sweet, floral undertone, when Kayla inquired about Earth. Logan spoke of the colony world of his upbringing, of its ochre soil and boundless skies, of his family's agricultural enterprise and the close-knit community that had nurtured him. He recounted his departure in pursuit of galactic exploration, the inherent loneliness of being distant from home, and his quest to find his place within the cosmos, one repair assignment at a time. "Do you miss it? Earth?" she inquired. "Occasionally, but I believe I yearn for the concept of home more than the physical location. Home is comprised of people, not places. At least, that is what my grandfather always maintained." Kayla smiled. "Your grandfather sounds wise." "He's a stubborn old codger who believes duct tape can resolve any issue," Logan stated fondly. "But yes, he possesses considerable wisdom when he chooses to apply it." Logan initially failed to notice the hushed reverence, the cessation of conversations as they passed. He remained oblivious to the scandalized expressions of the courtiers or the speculative glances from the palace staff. He perceived only Kayla, intelligent, humorous, benevolent, a listener who shared her insights without artifice, who challenged him, elicited his laughter, and gradually became the most cherished aspect of his days. It was his supervisor who ultimately intercepted him. "Hayes, you are playing with fire. What are you implying?" "The princess. You're spending a considerable amount of time with her." Logan bristled. "We are friends. Is there an issue with that?" His supervisor sighed. "Look, I value you. Your work is exemplary. You maintain a low profile. However, you must comprehend something. The princess, she has endured hardship. The entire galaxy is aware of it. There is not a noble lineage that has not dismissed her as a prospective spouse. The Queen has been endeavoring to arrange a marital union for years. Therefore, do not foster false hope in the young lady. You are a mechanic, Hayes, a human mechanic. Whatever you perceive transpiring between you two, it cannot progress. The most compassionate course of action is to maintain your distance. Logan returned home that night, his supervisor's words echoing in his mind. He accessed the Galactic Net, initiating a search. The information he unearthed ignited his indignation. Articles detailing the unmarriageable princess, speculation regarding genetic imperfections, cruel commentary concerning her appearance, her intrinsic worth, her future prospects. He encountered pronouncements from rejected suitors, some expressing commiseration, others mockery. One Torvan prince had derided her as the universe's most unfortunate jest, a royal of peasant visage. He contemplated Kayla, her sharp intellect, her even quicker wit, the effervescence that emanated from her when discussing subjects of passion, her inherent kindness toward all individuals, irrespective of their standing. He recalled the subtle melancholy that sometimes flickered in her eyes when she believed herself unobserved. The following day, Logan formally requested an audience with Queen Thessera. The Queen received him in her private study, a sanctuary lined with tomes and celestial charts. She appeared fatigued, Logan surmised, the kind of exhaustion that stemmed from bearing unbearable burdens for an extended duration. "Mr. Hayes," she commenced, "this is unexpected. Is there an issue with the fleet?" "No, Your Majesty. The fleet is functioning optimally. I am here regarding a matter of a different nature, a personal one." Thessera's demeanor shifted to one of caution. "Proceed." Logan inhaled deeply. "I seek your consent to court your daughter." The subsequent silence was absolute. The Queen regarded him as though he had suddenly begun speaking in an unknown language. Finally, she found her voice. "You wish to what?" "Court Princess Kayla formally, with the intention of marriage should we prove compatible." Thessera rose and moved toward the window. When she spoke, her voice was meticulously modulated. "Mr. Hayes, I acknowledge and appreciate your actions on behalf of my daughter. I am profoundly grateful for your companionship with her, but you do not fully grasp the implications of your request. Then enlighten me." The Queen turned, and Logan perceived a profound sorrow in her gaze. "My daughter has been spurned by every eligible bachelor in this sector of the galaxy. Princes, nobles, prosperous merchants. Each one took a single glance at her and devised reasons to withdraw. Do you comprehend the impact that has upon an individual? To be perpetually informed that one is inadequate, insufficiently attractive, unworthy of affection." "Yes," Logan affirmed softly. "I was raised on a colony world, Your Majesty. I am the son of agrarian laborers. I have been apprised of my shortcomings my entire life. That is not what I observe when I behold your daughter." "And what do you observe?" "I perceive an individual of extraordinary intellect, capable of debating interstellar law more effectively than many legal practitioners. I perceive an individual who creates music that evokes emotions for which I lack vocabulary. I perceive an individual who extends kindness to mechanics, gardeners, and indeed, all those whom the nobility disdain. I perceive an individual who elicits my laughter, stimulates my intellect, and inspires me to aspire to greater heights. She lacks beauty by galactic standards." "Beauty standards are utterly preposterous," Logan stated bluntly, offering his apologies. "Your Majesty, but they are. Back on Earth, beauty standards fluctuate with each generation. What is deemed attractive within the Terran systems would be considered grotesque in the Andromedan cluster, and vice versa. It is all fabricated, entirely arbitrary. What truly matters is what resides here." He tapped his chest. "And here." He tapped his forehead. "Your daughter possesses both in abundant measure. You are human," Thessera stated. "Thus, the cultural discrepancies alone would be immense. The political ramifications of a princess entering into matrimony significantly beneath her social standing would precipitate a scandal." "Excellent," Logan declared. "Let them be scandalized. Let every noble who rejected her witness that someone valued her sufficiently to endure the ensuing furor. Let them perish from indignation." Despite herself, Thessera emitted a laugh. It was a brief, sharp sound of astonishment. "You are entirely serious. Why?" You could discover a suitable human woman, establish a tranquil existence, forego all this complexity. Why Kayla? Logan pondered how best to articulate his sentiments. Because when I am with her, I forget to be guarded. I forget to assume the role of the unassuming mechanic who diligently adheres to protocol. She compels me to engage in debate, to revel in laughter, and to embrace risks, for she is the first individual in years who has made me feel authentically myself, rather than merely a persona I inhabit. Because when she smiles in response to something I have stated, I feel as though I have achieved a prize of immense value. And if she should reject me, if her affections do not mirror mine, then at least she will know that someone considered her worthy of inquiry, that someone perceived her as desirable, as deserving, that someone regarded her not as a princess who failed to secure a suitor, but as a woman for whom it is worth waging a campaign. Thessera scrutinized him for a prolonged interval. "I cannot grant you permission," she declared at length. Logan's heart sank. "But not because I do not appreciate the sentiment you are conveying. I cannot grant permission because this decision rests not with me. It belongs to Kayla. She has been denied autonomy in her own life for far too extended a period. If you wish to court my daughter, Mr. Hayes, you must approach her directly, not me. And should she assent, then you will have my endorsement and my unwavering support, along with a stern admonishment that you are about to incur the wrath of some exceedingly influential individuals." Logan grinned. "Fortuitous, then, that I am merely a mechanic? There is little they can inflict upon me that has not already been endured." Logan located Kayla in the garden, seated by a fountain whose perpetually circulating water created a soothing, rhythmic cadence. She looked up upon hearing his approach, and her smile was warm. "Logan, what brings you to the gardens? Should you not be immersed elbow-deep in some engine?" He sat beside her, suddenly experiencing a nervousness he had not felt even when confronting the Queen. "Kayla, I must pose a question to you." She turned to face him fully, concern evident in her expression, her hand lightly touching her features. "Is everything quite well?" "That depends entirely upon your response." He took a breath. "I am aware of the suitors, of each and every one. I comprehend their pronouncements, their sentiments." Kayla's expression became guarded, that familiar armor of practiced indifference settling into place. "I see. And you wish to what? Offer your commiseration. Assure me that I am not as unsightly as they proclaim." "No," Logan asserted firmly. "I wish to inform them that they are all utter fools. Every single one of them." Kayla blinked. "What?" "You are not unsightly, Kayla. You are distinctive. Yes, your scales do not conform to the customary pattern. Your features are not symmetrical. So what? Do you know what I observe when I look at you? I see an individual whose eyes ignite when discussing subjects of passion. I see an individual who displays kindness even when the galaxy has treated her with harshness. I see an individual who elicits my laughter, challenges my perspective, and renders each day more captivating simply by virtue of her presence." "Logan," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What are you implying?" "I'm implying that I wish to court you formally. I wish to accompany you to dinners, to gardens, and to any other destination you desire. I wish to engage in debates with you regarding political matters, to listen to your musical performances, and to absorb your opinions on every conceivable subject. I desire an opportunity to ascertain whether this connection between us might blossom into something genuine." "You are human," Kayla stated, as though he might have overlooked this detail. "You are a mechanic. I am a princess. The ensuing scandal alone would be immense. I am aware. My mother's adversaries would exploit it to her detriment. They might have remarked that she was so eager for me to find a husband that she'd approve a match with someone so unsuitable. Likely. You'd have been the subject of ridicule, scorned. They would have labeled you the utter simpleton who ended up with the princess nobody desired. Let them think what they will." Kayla regarded him, her scaled features etched with bewilderment. "Why? Why would you willingly put yourself through such an ordeal?" "Because you are invaluable," Logan stated with utter simplicity. "Because all those so-called aristocrats were so fixated on your appearance, they never bothered to truly see you. That was their mistake. I have no interest in being part of the aristocracy, or suitable, or politically expedient. My interest lies solely with you. Tears began to trace paths down Kayla's iridescent cheeks. No one has ever expressed such sentiments to me. Then everyone you've encountered has been profoundly misguided. Logan, I'm apprehensive. What if we embark on this journey and it proves unsuccessful? What if you come to the realization that they were correct, that I'm not worth the difficulty? He gently clasped her hands in his. In that event, we shall navigate the situation like mature individuals and part amicably as friends. But Kayla, consider this. What if it succeeds? What if we could forge something extraordinary, and we never dared to try, paralyzed by the fear of potential setbacks? She let out a soft chuckle, a sound tinged with melancholy, halfway between a laugh and a sob. When did you acquire such profound wisdom? I'm not wise. I'm merely a mechanic who recognizes exceptional value when it presents itself. So, what is your decision? Will you grant me the privilege of courting you? Kayla met his gaze, truly seeing him for the first time, and Logan perceived a nascent hope bloom in her eyes, a complex blend of hope, trepidation, and untapped potential. Yes, she finally affirmed. Yes, I will permit you to court me. A broad grin spread across his face. Excellent, because I've already sought your mother's consent and she indicated the decision was entirely yours. However, should you accept, her full endorsement would be secured. So, we are officially commencing this endeavor. You consulted my mother? Kayla's voice ascended an octave as she inquired. And me? It seemed the proper courtesy. Furthermore, had she outright refused, I felt it prudent to be aware of that before making a complete fool of myself. Kayla's laughter, genuine and unrestrained this time, filled the air, and she impulsively embraced him. You are utterly preposterous. Indeed, but you find yourself fond of me regardless. I truly am. News of their developing relationship permeated the palace within mere hours. By the subsequent day, the intelligence had disseminated to the Galactic Court. By the week's conclusion, it had become the paramount topic of gossip and scandal. A human mechanic engaged in courtship with a princess. It was common knowledge that the princess was considered unmarriageable. The discourse varied widely, from amusement and outright indignation to sheer bewilderment. Logan remained unfazed by the widespread commentary. He escorted Kayla to dining establishments that offered culinary delights from a multitude of worlds. They strolled through bustling marketplaces where vendors hawked their wares in a vibrant symphony of languages. He imparted the skill of riding a hoverbike to her, and in turn, she initiated him into the intricacies of traditional Valyrian dances. Their conversations often delved into spirited debates concerning music, political matters, and the most effective methods for rectifying a plasma conduit. 3 months into their courtship, the inaugural formal challenge materialized. A dignitary from Torvin, the very same noble whose prince had previously spurned Kayla years prior, formally requested an audience with Queen Thezera. He arrived accompanied by a considerable retinue, clearly intending to project an air of intimidation. Your Majesty, he declared, his voice laden with thinly veiled solicitude, surely you cannot sanction this charade. A human mechanic pursuing your daughter. It casts a shadow upon your lineage, demeaning the princess herself. We all comprehend the challenging circumstances, but this is hardly a resolution. Queen Thezera's countenance was as frigid as glacial ice. The situation, as you term it, is entirely outside your purview. My daughter is being courted by a gentleman of merit. I perceive no impropriety. Merit? The noble's voice escalated. He possesses no title, no amassed wealth, no political affiliations. What conceivable value could he offer a princess? He offers her something none of your kind could ever provide, Thezera stated coolly. Respect, affection, the consideration of her as an individual rather than a mere political pawn to be assessed and then discarded. But your Majesty, consider the societal implications, the perception within the Galactic Court. This could potentially diminish your standing. My standing will persevere. As for the Galactic Court, their opinions are inconsequential. My daughter's felicity holds immeasurable value above their approval. The noble departed in a disgruntled manner, yet he was not the final one. A procession of dignitaries followed, each articulating concerns regarding decorum, established traditions, and the sanctity of noble bloodlines. Thesera courteously declined each of them. In the confines of the Mechanics Bay, Logan confronted his own set of obstacles. Aristocrats who brought their vessels for maintenance often uttered pointed remarks about mechanics who overstepped their boundaries. Logan, however, meticulously repaired their craft and levied double the standard charges. 6 months into their relationship, at a formal banquet that Kayla insisted Logan attend as her guest, a duke from Centurion made the egregious error of loudly commenting on the princess's questionable taste in companions. Logan detected Kayla's sharp intake of breath and observed her instinctively reach for the protective shell of indifference she adopted when hurt. He rose from his seat, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Excuse me," he announced, his voice resonating across the sudden hush. "Duke Renaud, is it? You were referring to the questionable taste in companions. I wish to introduce myself properly." The Duke's face reddened. "I meant no offense." "I'm quite certain you did not," Logan replied with an air of nonchalance. "However, here's the reality. I may be a mechanic. I may lack a title or noble ancestry, but I recognize excellence when I encounter it. Princess Kayla is brilliant, compassionate, skilled, and possesses the remarkable patience to endure individuals who judge her based on the arrangement of her scales rather than the substance of her character. Consequently, yes, perhaps her taste in companions is indeed questionable, because she's willing to share a table with people like you, who deem it acceptable to insult her within her own residence." The silence that followed was profound. The Duke stammered incoherently. Queen Thesera observed the scene with barely concealed amusement. Kayla gazed at Logan, her expression one he struggled to decipher. "Furthermore," Logan continued, emboldened by his discourse, "I find it rather curious that everyone present is so preoccupied with propriety, tradition, and lineage. Yet not a single individual here seems to prioritize what truly constitutes a successful partnership: mutual respect, shared passions, the ability to evoke laughter in one another, and the unwavering commitment to support each other through adversity. By those standards, Kayla and I are progressing quite admirably." "By your standards," the Duke scoffed. "Well, your standards appear designed to render everyone miserable, so I am perfectly content to disregard them." He resumed his seat. The dinner continued, but the prevailing atmosphere had irrevocably shifted. Following the meal, a surprising number of attendees approached Logan privately. Some chastised him for his perceived insolence, while others, predominantly younger nobles, expressed their gratitude for voicing their unspoken thoughts. "That was rather audacious," Kayla remarked to him later. Yet, a smile graced her lips. "You've made an adversary tonight." "I've made several adversaries, but I've also made a definitive statement. No one is permitted to insult you in my presence, not without facing repercussions." "My hero," she whispered, devoid of any trace of mockery, but brimming with genuine warmth. A year into their courtship, Logan presented his proposal. Not at a lavish state banquet or during a royal festivity, but within the very Mechanics Bay where their friendship had first blossomed. He had crafted something for her, a delicate device resembling a music box, yet operating on principles that harmoniously blended human and Valyrian technological advancements. "What is this?" Kayla inquired, turning it over in her hands. "Open it," she complied. Within, a holographic projection materialized, depicting every shared moment they had experienced over the preceding year. Their excursions through vibrant markets, their shared laughter over meals, their graceful dances in the verdant garden. The images cycled through, accompanied by a melodic score, a fusion of human and Valyrian musical styles that Logan had painstakingly composed over several months. "Logan, this is exquisite. There's more. Watch." The final image resolved into text, words inscribed in both their languages. "Kayla, will you marry me?" She looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Yes, yes, of course, yes." Logan produced a ring. "A human custom," he explained, gently placing it upon her finger. It was not ostentatious, merely a simple band he had meticulously machined himself, but Kayla regarded it as if it were fashioned from pure starlight. The wedding was scheduled to take place in 3 months. The Queen desired to grant the Galactic Court ample time to acclimate to the notion. Time for the scandal to subside. It did not. If anything, the announcement of an impending actual wedding exacerbated the situation. Delegations arrived to voice their formal protests. Religious leaders declared it a transgression against sacred traditions. Noble families denounced it as an affront to millennia of established protocols for proper lineage. Logan and Kayla disregarded them all. They were far too engrossed in planning their future together, debating the merits of residing in the palace versus a dwelling in the city, the style of their nuptials, a purely traditional Valyrian affair or something more eclectic. They contemplated whether their honeymoon destination should be Earth, allowing Kayla to meet Logan's family, or perhaps a neutral pleasure world. 2 weeks prior to the wedding, the most significant challenge yet emerged. A confederation of noble houses, spearheaded by the very Torvan ambassador who had previously dismissed Kayla years earlier, demanded a formal audience with the Queen and her council. They asserted they possessed irrefutable evidence that the impending marriage was inappropriate and ought to be prohibited. The council chamber was filled to capacity. Logan stood steadfastly beside Kayla, his hand clasped firmly in hers. Queen Thesera occupied her throne, her expression inscrutable. The Torvan ambassador advanced forward. Your Majesty, esteemed council members, we present ourselves before you today with profound concerns regarding the proposed union between Princess Kayla and the human Logan Hayes. We have consulted with legal scholars, cultural historians, and genetic specialists. The evidence is unequivocal. This marriage should not proceed. On what grounds? Thesera inquired, her voice carrying an edge of dangerous calm. On multiple grounds, Your Majesty. Firstly, the genetic incompatibility. Humans and Valyrians are physiologically incapable of procreating. This union would signify the cessation of your direct bloodline. My daughter's capacity to produce an heir has never been contingent upon her marital status. Hence, there are alternative avenues available. You are aware, the ambassador pressed onward, that second, the cultural disparities are too profound. Human lifespans, societal customs, dietary requirements, all of these present insurmountable obstacles to a successful partnership. Insurmountable, Logan interjected, unable to maintain silence. That is a rather strong descriptor for challenges that millions of mixed-species couples across the galaxy have successfully overcome. You are not qualified to address this matter, the ambassador retorted sharply. I am qualified to speak about my own relationship. Thank you. The ambassador redirected his attention to the Queen. Finally, and most crucially, we must address the matter of social standing. Princess Kayla is royalty. Logan Hayes is a commoner, and moreover, a human commoner. No offense intended to his species, but humans are relative newcomers to galactic society. They lack the sophisticated bloodlines, the refined genetic makeup, and the advanced cultural development characteristic of more ancient races. This marriage would dilute the royal lineage with inferior genetic material. The chamber erupted in an uproar. Logan felt Kayla's grip tighten on his hand. He began to step forward, but Thesera raised a hand, signaling for silence. Inferior genetics, she repeated, her voice as sharp as ice. Pray tell, Ambassador, by what criteria do you ascertain genetic superiority? By the universally recognized standards of the Galactic Court, lineage, genetic markers indicative of intelligence and aptitude, and the absence of deficiencies. I see. And my daughter, with her distinctive scale pattern and asymmetrical features, where does she align with these criteria? The ambassador displayed a flicker of discomfort. That is a separate issue, Your Majesty. Is it? It appears to me you are employing the same flawed logic that once deemed my brilliant daughter unmarriageable, the identical reasoning that prioritizes superficial physical attributes over genuine character, capability, and inherent worth. Your Majesty, this is fundamentally different. We are discussing the integrity of the royal bloodline. The integrity of the royal bloodline, Thesera stated, rising to her feet, her voice echoing throughout the chamber, will be perfectly maintained. My daughter is entering into matrimony with a man who cherishes her for her true self, who has vehemently defended her honor, and who brings her profound happiness. The genetics of that man, his species, his social standing, none of these factors hold as much significance as the simple truth that he loves her, and she loves him. But the traditions, the ambassador began. Traditions evolve, Thesera interrupted. They must. lest they transform into shackles that bind rather than guiding principles that assist. I have witnessed my daughter spurned by numerous suitors who were too obtuse to recognize her intrinsic value. I have observed her endure the cruelty of a society that judges worth by outward appearance and lineage rather than by character and deeds. I will not stand idly by while she relinquishes her opportunity for happiness simply because you and your coalition are disconcerted by change. This is sheer lunacy, another noble interjected. You are allowing personal sentiment to supersede political sagacity. No, Thesera countered. I am permitting wisdom to triumph over political expediency. You wish to discuss genetic superiority? Let us do so. Humans have been integrated into galactic society for less than 2 centuries. Yet they have made contributions to science, art, engineering, and diplomacy that rival species with millennia of development. They adapt. They innovate. They devise solutions to challenges that the rest of us deem insurmountable. That mechanic you also readily disparage. He has enhanced the operational efficiency of our entire palace fleet by 18%, employing methodologies that none of our ostensibly superior engineers ever conceived. Logan blinked, surprised. He had submitted those modifications through the standard channels. He had not realized the Queen had been paying such close attention. Thesera continued, but more importantly, beyond his technical proficiencies or the achievements of his species, Logan Hayes has accomplished something that none of your noble suitors could manage. He looked upon my daughter and truly saw her. Not a princess to be evaluated for strategic advantage. Not a genetic anomaly to be dissected or derided. He saw a person, a brilliant, accomplished, and worthy individual. And he valued her sufficiently to confront all of you, knowing full well that you would mock him, challenge him, and endeavor to undermine him. Members of this council, that is precisely the caliber of character I desire within my family. The chamber fell silent. The Torvan ambassador made one final attempt. Your Majesty, we merely seek to shield you from making a decision you will undoubtedly come to regret. I appreciate your concern, Thesera replied, her voice softening perceptibly, though losing none of its firmness. However, the only decision I would truly regret is denying my daughter this profound opportunity for happiness. The wedding will proceed as originally planned. This council is now dismissed. The nobles filed out, some radiating anger, others appearing contemplative, and a few clearly perplexed by the unexpected turn of events. Logan and Kayla remained standing, their hands still intertwined. Thank you, Mother, Kayla expressed, her voice thick with emotion. Thesera offered a gentle smile. Thank you for finding someone worthy of such a fight. The wedding day dawned with the simultaneous rise of 2 suns over Valyrian, bathing the sky in hues of deep purple and radiant gold. The designated royal wedding venue, an expansive garden amphitheater capable of accommodating thousands, was filled to its utmost capacity. News agencies from a dozen different worlds had established their camera positions. Half of the galactic court had assembled, some to lend their support to the Union, while others were present to witness what they perceived as an impending, spectacular catastrophe. Logan stood at the altar, attired in a suit that artfully combined human and Valyrian formal wear, his heart pounding with anticipation. His family had journeyed from Earth, his mother shedding happy tears, his grandfather beaming with paternal pride. Friends from the Mechanics' Bay occupied several rows, their boisterous cheers audible until the commencement of the ceremony. Then the music began, and Kayla made her entrance. She wore a gown that shimmered with embedded lights, a traditional Valyrian design elegantly modified to incorporate human aesthetic elements. Her scales had been meticulously polished to a radiant gleam, and while they remained distinctly patterned and unusual by conventional Valyrian standards, Logan thought she had never looked more breathtakingly beautiful. She proceeded down the aisle with her head held high, her mother by her side, her gaze fixed upon him with a joy that made his breath catch in his throat. The ceremony itself was a harmonious amalgamation of traditions, incorporating human marriage vows and ancient Valyrian bonding rituals, with promises exchanged in both languages. When the officiant posed the question regarding any objections to the union, a few nobles shifted uneasily in their seats, but none dared to voice dissent. Thesera's earlier defense had clearly illuminated the potential consequences of any further opposition. Logan gently slipped a second ring onto Kayla's finger, this one more ornate, adorned with a gemstone sourced from his home colony world. Kayla, in turn, presented him with a Valyrian bonding bracelet, intricately engraved with symbols representing their shared future. They recited their vows, Logan's voice steady despite his underlying nervousness. Kayla's voice was clear and strong. "I promise to see you, Logan," he declared, "to cherish you, to stand by your side through whatever challenges arise, to bring laughter into your life, and to listen whenever you need to speak. I promise to be your partner in all endeavors." "I promise to trust you," Kayla responded, "to share my life with you with complete honesty, to champion your aspirations, and to forge new dreams together. To love you not in spite of our differences, but precisely because of them. By the authority vested in me by the Valyrian crown and recognized by the Galactic Federation," the officiant proclaimed, "I pronounce you bonded partners, joined in matrimony." They sealed their union with a kiss to a crescendo of thunderous applause, and undoubtedly a considerable number of heartfelt tears. As they walked back down the aisle together, Logan observed the expressions etched on the faces of the noble guests. Some conveyed genuine happiness for them. Others registered discomfort but a reluctant acceptance. A select few still conveyed their disapproval. It mattered not to him. He held Kayla's hand tightly, her smile illuminating her features like a beacon. Their future stretched before them, brimming with boundless possibility. The reception was a magnificent affair, a sumptuous spread of food and drink sourced from 100 worlds, music that artfully blended styles from across the vast expanse of the galaxy, dancing that continued for hours. Logan danced with his new wife, with his mother, and with Queen Thezera, who softly whispered, "Thank you for bringing such profound happiness to my daughter." Kayla shared a dance with Logan's grandfather, who regaled her with amusing anecdotes about Logan's childhood mishaps, eliciting much laughter. Speeches were delivered. Logan's closest confidant from the Mechanics Bay, recounted embarrassing tales from Logan's initial days at the palace. Kayla's childhood tutor spoke of the exceptionally bright student who had blossomed into a remarkable woman. Queen Thezera raised a toast, celebrating new beginnings and the courage required to challenge antiquated assumptions. As the night progressed and guests began their departures, Logan and Kayla discreetly slipped away to a secluded balcony offering a panoramic view of the city. Distant lights twinkled, ships navigated the night sky, and life continued its vibrant, albeit chaotic, unfolding. "We did it," Kayla murmured, leaning against him. "We actually accomplished it." "Did you harbor any doubts about our success?" "Perhaps a little. There were moments when I feared the immense pressure would prove too overwhelming, that you would comprehend the magnitude of what you were undertaking and reconsider." Logan gently turned her to face him. "Kayla, listen to me. I meant every single word I uttered. You are worth it. All of it. The scandal, the challenges, the disapproval. You are worth every bit of it. Even if we cannot have children of our own. Even if my genetics are truly flawed." "Genetics are not flawed, Logan," he stated firmly. "They are simply different. And as for children, we will address that matter if and when we decide to. There are options available. Adoption, combined genetic therapies, or perhaps we will simply enrich our lives with other meaningful pursuits. We will determine that together." "Together," Kayla repeated softly. "I find the sound of that quite pleasing." Over the ensuing months, Logan and Kayla seamlessly integrated into married life. They opted to reside in a house within the city rather than the palace, desiring a degree of autonomy while remaining close enough for Kayla to fulfill her royal obligations. The dwelling, while modest by royal standards, felt akin to a palace to Logan, featuring a charming garden courtyard and walls constructed from the same crystalline material as the royal spires. Their initial weeks together were an exhilarating blend of discovery and cultural compromise. Logan had to adapt to Valyrian sleeping patterns, which operated on a 28-hour cycle as opposed to Earth's 24. Kayla, in turn, had to adjust to human culinary preferences, although she developed a surprising fondness for pizza, a delicacy Logan introduced her to at a human-owned establishment in the diplomatic sector. They engaged in playful disagreements on an array of topics, from the optimal ambient temperature for living spaces to the propriety of undertaking mechanical projects within the communal living area. Kayla typically prevailed in most disputes, but Logan claimed a decisive victory on the mechanical projects issue after pledging to ensure thorough cleanup. Logan continued his work in the Palace Mechanics Bay, and additionally, he began providing consultations on design improvements for other royal houses that had heard acclaim regarding his innovative enhancements. News traveled swiftly through diplomatic circles. The human who had wed Princess Kayla was also the brilliant mind behind the Palace fleet's enhanced operational capabilities. Suddenly, Logan found himself in high demand as a consultant, fielding numerous requests from aristocrats who had previously looked down upon him. The irony was not lost on him. "Now they want my assistance," he confided to Kayla one evening. "The very same individuals who deemed me unworthy to court you are now eager to compensate me for my expertise." Kayla responded with a knowing smile. "Charge them triple," she advised. "Call it a surcharge for the inconvenience and their prior impertinence." He obliged, and remarkably, no one voiced any complaints. The substantial earnings from his consultations enabled them to finance several philanthropic initiatives that Kayla had long championed. These included a scholarship fund for underprivileged students and a much-needed medical facility in the city's most impoverished sector. The initial controversy surrounding their union gradually faded, supplanted by fresh rumors and different disputes. However, the consequences of their actions resonated far beyond their immediate circle in ways they hadn't foreseen. Logan began receiving correspondence from other humans involved in interspecies partnerships, expressing gratitude for how he had eased their own societal burdens. Kayla, in turn, heard from Valyrians who had felt ostracized due to their distinctive appearances. They shared how witnessing their princess find happiness had instilled in them a renewed sense of hope. One evening, a young Valyrian woman arrived at their doorstep. Her scales possessed a more intricate pattern than even Kayla's, and her facial features deviated significantly from the conventional Valyrian norm. She stood there, visibly trembling with apprehension, yet resolute in her purpose. "Your Highness," she stated, her voice quivering slightly, "I simply wish to express my profound gratitude. I have been engaged to a remarkable man for 2 years, but we dared not make it public, fearing his family's disapproval. They consider me unsightly, believing I would bring them shame. However, after your wedding, he confronted them. He declared that if you and Mr. Hayes could surmount the scandal, then so could we. Our wedding is scheduled for next month." Kayla embraced the young woman, tears welling in her eyes. "I am overjoyed for you. You deserve every measure of happiness life can offer." After the visitor departed, Kayla turned to Logan. "We made that happen. We contributed to making this possible." "No," Logan corrected her gently. "You did that by possessing the courage to accept my courtship, by standing before the Galactic Court and speaking your truth. I merely posed a question." "You changed the world," Kayla insisted. "We changed it together. That's the entire point." Other couples in mixed-species relationships who had previously concealed their unions or avoided commitment due to societal pressures began to emerge from the shadows. A human woman and a Centaurian man announced their betrothal, explicitly citing Logan and Kayla's example in their public declaration. A Valyrian noble married a Terran diplomat in a ceremony that intentionally mirrored certain aspects of Logan and Kayla's own nuptials. Each new union represented a subtle act of defiance against centuries of entrenched societal norms. Each couple served as another small breach in the monolithic wall of prejudice. 1 year after their wedding, Kayla received an invitation to address a session of the Galactic Court concerning social reform. She stood before the assembled dignitaries and eloquently discussed the arbitrary nature of aesthetic standards, the detrimental impact of rigid social hierarchies, and the paramount importance of valuing character above physical appearance or lineage. Logan observed from the gallery, watching his wife captivate the attention of beings who had once dismissed her without a second thought. "My husband is human," she announced, "and I can sense some of you inwardly pondering if this somehow diminishes me, if I compromised, or if I settled for less. But I wish for you to comprehend something. Logan Hayes did not marry me despite my appearance. He did not choose me out of pity, nor because he was unable to find a more aesthetically pleasing partner. He married me because he values intellect, kindness, wit, and shared interests above superficial physical attributes. He married me because he took the time to truly know me." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the chamber, making deliberate eye contact with those nobles who had once rejected her and with diplomats who had engaged in whispers behind her back. How many of you can honestly say the same about your own spouses? How many of you selected your partners based on genuine compatibility rather than strategic advantage or societal obligation? How many of you are truly content in your meticulously arranged, genetically pre-approved unions? The subsequent silence was profound. Several nobles shifted uneasily. A few appeared contemplative. One aged Centaurian diplomat, whose own marriage had been a political arrangement for 40 years, gazed down at his hands, his expression utterly unreadable. I am not suggesting that all arranged marriages are inherently flawed, Kayla continued. Some prove remarkably successful. Certain individuals discover profound love and companionship within unions that commenced as matters of political expediency. However, a system that places greater emphasis on epidermal texture or symmetry than on inherent character, that prioritizes lineage over intrinsic compatibility, is a system ripe for transformation. She elaborated, "We can uphold tradition while simultaneously acknowledging that certain traditions inflict harm." She recounted her own personal history, speaking with unvarnished candor about years of rejection, about the psychological burden of being repeatedly told she was insufficient, unattractive, and undeserving of affection. She described the suitors who would scrutinize her for mere moments before fabricating excuses, the overheard remarks, and the published articles that characterized her marriageability as a problem requiring a solution rather than a person with feelings. "I internalized it," she confessed. "I began to believe them. I started to think that perhaps I was fundamentally flawed, that I genuinely didn't merit love, companionship, or happiness. And then, this mechanic from Earth rescued me, not seeing any of the perceived flaws that everyone else fixated upon. He simply saw me, and he deemed me worthy of pursuit." Her voice faltered slightly, and she took a moment to regain her composure. Logan felt an overwhelming urge to approach her and offer support, but he understood that this was a moment she needed to navigate independently. "This," he mused, "is what genuine courage looks like. Standing before your detractors and articulating your truth." "We must evolve," Kayla declared with renewed firmness, her voice regaining its strength. "Not solely for my sake, nor for the benefit of a select few who deviate from conventional norms, but for everyone. Because this framework that judges an individual's worth based on their outward appearance and ancestral lineage inflicts damage upon us all. It compels individuals into unfulfilling unions for the sake of political alliances. It elevates those of mediocre talent simply because they were born into influential families. It dismisses the brilliant because their appearance does not conform to societal expectations. And it instills in our children the notion that their value is determined by factors beyond their control, rather than by the choices they make and the individuals they aspire to become." Her address became a landmark speech, widely disseminated in news reports across the galaxy, meticulously analyzed and debated in academic institutions and diplomatic forums. Some lauded her bravery and candor. Others dismissed her as naive, asserting that she sought to dismantle millennia of tradition out of personal resentment. Nevertheless, the dialogue had been initiated, and it showed no signs of abating. Younger members of the nobility began to question their prearranged betrothals. Parents started to consider compatibility as a significant factor alongside strategic advantages. Educational institutions incorporated discussions on social justice and the arbitrary nature of beauty standards into their academic programs. It was not a revolution, not yet, but it was the genesis of change, slow, tenacious, and inevitable. Societal structures that had endured for eons were not about to undergo an immediate transformation, but conversations were ignited, assumptions were challenged, and voices were lent to those who had long questioned the established order. 2 years into their marriage, Logan and Kayla made the decision to adopt. This profound choice arose after a visit to a refugee camp on the city's outskirts, where displaced children from various conflicts awaited uncertain futures. Their intention was clear: to adopt an orphan who needed them most, irrespective of species, not solely a Valyrian or a human child. They encountered Mira on a dreary afternoon, as sheets of rain lashed against the windows of the camp administrator's office. She was 5 years old, a member of a species whose homeworld had been annihilated in a territorial conflict between two dominant powers. Her people had been caught in the crossfire, their planet rendered uninhabitable, and their populace dispersed across refugee settlements throughout the sector. Mira was one of only a few dozen known survivors of her species. She sat quietly in a corner of the communal room, clutching a well-worn stuffed animal that had seen better days. Her large eyes, observant and weary, watched as other children engaged in play, cried, or sought comfort from caretakers. Mira, however, simply observed, as if she had learned that attracting attention was inherently perilous. Kayla knelt beside her, moving with deliberate slowness. "Hello," she said softly. "My name is Kayla. What is yours?" Mira hesitated initially. Then in a voice so faint Logan almost missed it, she replied, "Mira, but no one wants me." She added, "I overheard the workers speaking. They said I'm too sad, too broken, that I'll never adjust." Kayla's eyes welled with tears. "I understand that feeling. People said similar things about me too. That I was too different, too unconventional, that no one would ever desire me." Mira looked up, truly focusing on Kayla for the first time. "But you are a princess." "I am," Kayla confirmed. "And I too was told I was too unsightly to marry, that I would never find someone who would choose me. But this man," Kayla gestured towards Logan, "he chose me nonetheless. He looked beyond what others deemed unattractive and found me beautiful. Do you know what I see when I look at you?" Mira shook her head. "I see someone resilient, someone who has endured something terrible, someone who is frightened yet still brave enough to persevere. I see someone who deserves a family that will cherish her precisely as she is." Logan knelt beside Kayla. "We would like to be that family if you will have us. You don't have to make a decision right now. We can visit, get to know each other. But Mira, I want you to understand something. You are not to anything. You are exactly right, just as you are." Mira gazed between them, a mixture of disbelief and hope warring on her small face. "You truly want me? Even though I'm not Valyrian or human? Even though I have bad dreams and sometimes I can't stop crying?" "Especially then," Kayla stated firmly. "Family isn't about sharing the same species or being flawless. It's about supporting each other through difficult times and celebrating the joyful ones." The adoption process entailed 3 months of extensive paperwork, numerous interviews, and complex legal procedures. Some officials raised concerns about the appropriateness of an interspecies adoption, questioning whether Mira would be better placed with a family of her own kind, if any could be located. Logan and Kayla tenaciously fought against every objection, engaging top legal counsel and making it unequivocally clear that Mira was their daughter in every meaningful sense. Upon receiving the final approval, they brought Mira home to a meticulously prepared room. The walls were adorned with celestial depictions of her lost homeworld, painstakingly researched from surviving astronomical archives. The room contained books in her native language, toys reflecting her cultural heritage, and a small garden plot in the courtyard where she could cultivate the flowers that once bloomed on her planet. Mira stood in the doorway, her eyes wide with wonder as she took it all in. "This is for me," she whispered. "All yours," Logan confirmed. "Your room, your home, your family." That night, Mira experienced the first of many nightmares, awakening with screams filled with memories of the attack that had devastated her world. Kayla held her as she sobbed, rocking her gently and humming a Valyrian lullaby. Logan sat beside them, his hand resting on Mira's back, a steadfast presence. "We're here," Kayla whispered. "You're safe. We're not going anywhere." Witnessing Kayla's tenderness with Mira, Logan found himself falling in love with his wife all over again. She demonstrated remarkable patience during Mira's night terrors, remaining awake through long hours without complaint. She displayed creativity in her efforts to elicit smiles from the child, learning games from Mira's culture and integrating her traditions into their family life. She was fiercely protective, shielding Mira from anyone who dared suggest that adopting outside their species was improper, silencing criticism with a look that could chill stars. Mira flourished. Within months, the frightened little girl transformed into a curious, loquacious child who trailed Logan through his workshop, bombarding him with endless questions about how things worked and why. She would nestle into Kayla's lap during story time, her small arms encircling her mama's neck, a profound trust blossoming that she hadn't experienced since losing her birth family. She began referring to them as Mama and Papa, words that invariably brought tears of joy to both Logan and Kayla's eyes. 3 years into their marriage, Logan was offered the esteemed position of chief engineer for the Royal Fleet. This promotion came with a title and a degree of minor nobility by marriage, carrying certain privileges that Logan found amusingly ironic. The mechanics bay hosted a farewell party for him, teasing him about becoming one of the fancy people he used to disdain. "I'm still the same person," Logan insisted, "just with added responsibilities and slightly more refined attire." "You're sporting a ceremonial sash," his former supervisor pointed out. "You've definitely undergone a transformation." The party continued late into the night, filled with friends and colleagues celebrating his achievement. However, the moment Logan cherished most occurred later. Upon returning home to find Kayla and Mira asleep on the couch, a storybook resting open across Kayla's lap. He gently draped a blanket over them, bestowed a tender kiss upon each of them, and then sat watching them sleep, his heart overflowing with gratitude for the life they had meticulously constructed. 5 years into their marriage, Queen Thessera announced her intention to abdicate the throne. She was weary, the Queen stated, expressing her readiness to retire and cede leadership to the younger generation. In a decision that surprised many, she designated Kayla as her successor. The Galactic Court was once again thrown into an uproar. A queen with asymmetric scales, married to a human consort. It was unprecedented, scandalous, and deemed entirely inappropriate by many. Delegations arrived to lodge formal protests. The familiar arguments concerning genetic purity and traditional standards were resurrected. Kayla stood before the court, Logan at her side, and addressed their concerns with the same directness her mother had always demonstrated. "I comprehend your reservations," she stated. "I do not embody your preconceived notions of what a queen ought to resemble. I have married outside not only my species but also my social stratum. I have adopted a child from yet another species. By your conventional metrics, I am utterly unsuitable for the throne." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the assembled body. "However, here is what I offer you. A queen who understands the sting of unfair judgment. One who is intimately familiar with the pain of being dismissed for circumstances beyond her volition. One who has learned through arduous experience the critical importance of looking beyond superficial appearances to discern true worth. A queen who will govern not on the basis of arbitrary hierarchies but on merit, compassion, and justice." She continued, "Furthermore, you express concern regarding my human consort being unsuitable? Logan Hayes has served this palace and this planet with exceptional distinction for 8 years. He has significantly improved our technological infrastructure, defended my honor, assisted in raising a child who had lost everything, and demonstrated more genuine nobility in his actions than many who were born into titled positions. If anything, having him by my side makes me a more effective ruler." The debate raged for weeks. Ultimately, it was the populace, not the nobles preoccupied with propriety, who cast the deciding vote. The ordinary citizens of Valyria had witnessed the unfolding of Kayla and Logan's relationship, had observed their adoption of Mira, and had heard Kayla's impassioned speeches advocating for social reform and equitable treatment. Petitions supporting Kayla's ascension flooded in. Public demonstrations organized by citizens bearing signs that proclaimed, "We want Queen Kayla," and "Love matters more than bloodlines," filled the capital. The pressure exerted by the general populace became impossible to disregard. 6 months later, Kayla was formally crowned Queen of Valyria in a ceremony that artfully blended established traditions with progressive reforms. Logan stood beside her, not as prince consort, a title he had declined, but as her devoted partner and chief advisor. Mira, now 8 years old, watched with wide-eyed wonder as her mama ascended to the throne. Queen Kayla's first official act was to enact sweeping reforms to marriage laws, rendering discrimination based on species, appearance, or social class illegal. Her second initiative was to institute a merit-based system for all royal appointments, replacing hereditary positions with selections determined by demonstrated ability. Her third decree was to allocate funding for programs supporting orphans and refugees, ensuring that no child would be deprived of opportunities due to their background. Resistance naturally emerged. Certain noble families reacted with palpable outrage to the implemented changes. A few attempted to orchestrate opposition to undermine Kayla's authority, but the queen had diligently learned from her mother's example and her own lived experiences. She demonstrated unwavering resolve when necessary, offered compassion where feasible, and consistently remained receptive to genuine concerns while unequivocally rejecting arguments presented in bad faith. Logan provided unwavering support throughout these challenges, offering valuable perspective when she felt frustrated, injecting humor when she seemed overwhelmed, and displaying an unshakable belief in her capabilities. He continued to work on engines when he needed to clear his head, still acquired grease under his fingernails, and still found greater solace in the company of mechanics than of nobles. 10 years into their marriage, on the anniversary of their wedding, Logan and Kayla returned to the tranquil garden where he had first proposed. Mira was spending the evening with Thessera, granting them a rare period of solitude. They sat beside the fountain, their features now etched with the lines and marks of a decade filled with both trials and triumphs, yet fundamentally the same individuals who had fallen in love amidst repair manuals and philosophical discourse. "Do you ever regret it?" Logan inquired. "The scandal, the conflicts, taking on someone so entirely unsuitable?" Kayla let out a spontaneous laugh. "Every single day." His expression faltered until he perceived the genuine mirth in her eyes. She was grinning. "I'm joking, you absolute fool. No, I don't regret it. This life we've built, it's far more magnificent than anything I could have envisioned when I was merely the unmarriageable princess everyone pitied." "I never pitied you," Logan stated. "I know. That's precisely why I fell in love with you." They remained in comfortable silence, observing the water cascade through the fountain, absorbing the distant sounds of the city. Somewhere out there, couples were discovering love across the boundaries of species, social strata, and ingrained expectations. Somewhere, children who bore unusual appearances were growing up with the certainty that their intrinsic worth was not dictated by their outward presentation. Somewhere, the galaxy was undergoing a slow, persistent, yet undeniable betterment. "Did you ever imagine," Kayla eventually mused, "when you were a mechanic, diligently fixing ships and keeping a low profile, that you would eventually be married to a queen?" "Honestly, no," Logan replied. "I envisioned myself fixing engines until retirement, perhaps acquiring a small dwelling somewhere quiet, growing old, and indulging in restoring vintage vessels as a hobby." "Would you have been content?" Logan contemplated. "Perhaps in a limited capacity, but nothing comparable to this. This surpasses even my wildest dreams." "Even with all the political maneuvering and those nobles who still consider you inappropriate," Logan continued, "especially with that, I find watching you prove them wrong never loses its appeal." They lingered in the garden until the twin moons ascended, conversing about everything and nothing, charting future courses and reminiscing about past events. As they finally headed home, they walked hand in hand, a mechanic and a queen, partners in every meaningful sense. The narrative of the princess everyone deemed too unsightly to wed, and the human mechanic who proposed nonetheless, evolved into legend. It was recounted in schools as an exemplary tale of challenging unjust societal standards. It was referenced in political dialogues concerning social reform. It was whispered by young individuals contemplating unconventional relationships, serving as tangible proof that love possessed the power to surmount prejudice. But for Logan and Kayla, it was simply their lived reality. Complex, challenging, beautiful, and entirely their own. They had forged something authentic from the wreckage of others' expectations, cultivated a family born of love rather than genetics, and instigated societal transformation by steadfastly refusing to accept its inherent limitations. Years later, when Mira inquired of her papa why he had chosen to marry her mama when everyone asserted it was an ill-advised decision, Logan's response was remarkably straightforward, because some principles are worth defending. He stated, "Your mother was a treasure then. She remains a treasure now, and she will continue to be a treasure every single day for the remainder of my existence. And if people believe you erred," Mira interjected. Logan offered a smile. "Then they fail to grasp what holds genuine significance. Your mother is exceptional, compassionate, resilient, and witty. She is a magnificent sovereign, a devoted parent, and my dearest confidant. If individuals cannot perceive this, occupied as they are with observing the pattern of her scales, that is their failing, not mine." Mara pondered his words. "So, you're suggesting I should evaluate individuals based on their inherent qualities, not their outward appearance or their origins?" Precisely. Even if the entire world holds a contrary perspective, particularly then, someone must possess the fortitude to do what is just, even when it presents difficulty. It might as well be you. Mara beamed, a look that evoked Logan's memory of Kayla. All right, Papa. I understand. And she acted accordingly. Nurtured by a mechanic who transitioned to an advisor and a queen who had triumphed over societal biases, Mara matured with the conviction that one's value is determined by their character, that affection surpasses social standing, and that bravery sometimes necessitates standing resolute against the throng. 20 years after Logan first offered his proposal within a mechanic's workshop. Following a lifetime of disproving naysayers, he and Kayla sat together, observing the twilight descend. Their hair had begun to silver. Logan's beard was now streaked with white. Kayla's scales had subtly softened with advancing years. Mara had blossomed into adulthood, serving as a diplomat, carrying their instilled values across the vast expanse of the cosmos. Was it all worthwhile? Kayla inquired, echoing their earlier dialogue from years prior. All the struggles, all the adversities. Logan did not hesitate. Every single moment. Even the Duke, who continues to dispatch passive-aggressive missives regarding our unconventional union, especially him. His letters are quite amusing, Kayla chuckled. The sound was as vibrant and joyful as it had been 2 decades earlier. I love you, Logan Hayes. I love you too, Kayla Hayes, and I ask you to be my wife all over again. Scandal and all. The cosmos had undergone transformation in the years since a human mechanic had looked upon a princess whom everyone else disregarded and saw someone deserving of a devoted struggle. Not entirely, not universally, but sufficiently. Sufficiently so that unions between different species were now commonplace. Sufficiently so that career progression based on competence rather than lineage was gaining traction. Sufficiently so that established notions of beauty were being re-examined, challenged, and gradually reshaped. It was not perfect. Change rarely is, but it was improved. And that was worth everything. And that concluded the narrative. If you have listened all the way to this point, kindly share your thoughts on the story in the comments section. Whether favorable or critical, your feedback is instrumental in our ongoing refinement. Additionally, please register your approval with a like and subscribe to the channel for more narratives of this nature. I will also present another video on the screen shortly, which I am confident you will find engaging. A warm embrace until our next encounter.